So we are going to talk about Near Protocol, my exit plan. I did a video on Polkadot the other day and it went very well, so we're going to repeat it. I'm going to do it in a neater fashion than what I did in this video. And if you want more requests, let me know in the comments. Any extras I may do in Patreon and it'll be there as an exit plan list. So all be screenshots and you can go back to them as you well please do. So I won't be doing every single asset. This will just be a couple of videos here and there. Anyways, as you know, and if you've seen my tweet, this is kind of my exit plan for Polkadot. I have adapted it a little bit to make it better. This is a similar sort of layout we're going to be doing. So if you're new around here, get used to some positive kind of vibes, but also some realistic ones. I'm not going to be like going, oh, we're just going to go this. They're all based off psychological levels, or all based off obvious levels. And also you need to be able to take profit at some point because you don't know where it's going to go. You don't want to be that person that's going to go, oh, I'm just going to buy a load here and then just sell it all the way up here. Well, yeah, you can, but there's a chance that might not happen. Some people do get burnt by leaving money on the table. We know that. So we need to be somewhat careful. So let's get into it. Let's go into Near Protocol. And the reason being, I do like this asset. And a lot of people ask me why I've got this instead of other one. This is just one I really like the look of. And it is a non-Ethereum virtual machine and it kind of fits that mold nicely. It's had a lot of issues with certain VCs. I'm not going to mention any by name, but you probably know which cartel it was a part of, which went a little bit wrong. So this is why it looks a bit negative on price, like most assets, but it did drop quite significantly at the time which a certain exchange went bust, right? Fair enough. But staking rewards on this isn't too bad. The reality is Polkadot was the odd one because of the 28-day release. This one, not so bad, so we don't have to worry too much about the unstaking part, but I will be unstaking it at a certain point. However, it takes 2 to 3 days to unstake, so I don't think it's going to be much of a problem, so I'm not going to highlight it on this, all right? So let's get into the obvious. Now, what I want to do first is look at the psychological levels from this high here to this low, roughly around here. Let me just zoom in to make sure I got it near enough bang on essentially. Now, when we talk about levels of significance, Fibonacci is a good starting point, but also so is structure, right? So we've got our kind of reference point essentially, but we've got to look at stuff like this, for example, even this, for example, where you could be like, well, if I bought at that price, I may want to take profit. In certain circumstances, you may not want to take profit because it's not enough risk reward, but you may want to protect your ass by taking a small bit out, and then you've got some more money to play with. Essentially, you know, if you do that with all your bags, if it hits a certain point, you may well have a shitcoin bag where you've built from your profits and you can go and blast it on those fresh new projects. Because everyone in my comments goes, well, if you just buy new stuff, you'll be fine. Doesn't always work the case, but I'd rather do that risk-free personally. But the first obvious level that I would be interested in would be this level here, this $5.60. Kind of sticks out like a donkey's bollock, really, let's be honest, right? So if we're just going to highlight that entire level here, I, for one, would say take TP 10% of your bag off there. In my opinion, I think that looks like a solid level of genuine interest because, one, it may well gravitate up to it, but also it's not a bad payday if you've actually bought down here. That's still roughly a 3 to 4x, which is quite big in the grand scheme of things when you look at the grand situation of that. That is huge, right? It may not be perfect, but you get the idea. Most people would at least get a 2x from that point. Now, that's an obvious one, right? Another obvious one is just a bit up the road here around this $8 level. Significant levels of support and resistance around this point. Kind of important. And again, I would probably say the exact same thing. Take 10% off the table there. Now, this is where it gets more interesting because we are getting higher up the scale, but also you've got this significant drop and we may well start teleporting up to some bigger levels if obviously the bull market comes and it gets to that point. Liquidity will start coming into the market and things will get a little bit toasty. Things that drop the most tend to rise the most as well with lack of liquidity. Obviously, VCs will be now out of this as well, which is always a good plus. So that is a huge fundamental element in terms of why prices may well rise. But for me, I would also look at taking a little bit of profit around here again at 10%. Why? Because this to me is still massive money. If you think, right, if you're buying these lows, you are still making money on these levels. And then you got a much bigger element. Now, for me, this is my personal opinion, I think NIA kind of came out at one of those times where it wasn't really a massive token at the start, but it kind of ramped up with the bull market. And in my opinion, it wasn't truly finished in terms of where it is now versus where the peak of the market cycle was. So we may well find that it has a much bigger area to go above in terms of the bull cycle, which could be hugely significant. Now, again, we talk about obvious levels. And what I'm going to say here, this level here around $12, I'd probably say, well, you know what? I'd probably be, again, in the same sort of situation where 10% is probably quite a good little area. But for me, I would rather do this. I would rather take 20% at that level, and then I am more than happy to let the rest of it run, right? Because this is a significant level and it may well just shoot much higher. You have basically taken 50% off. And as I say, if you've been buying at these absolute critical low levels around $1.10, $1, $30, whatever, you have still, even to this point, have pretty much made a 10x, and you'll still have half of your bag in. Now, this is where it'll get interesting. Now, for me, I would rather say, let it run from this point onwards up to potentially up here. This is where it'll get very, very interesting, where you could be looking at some massive, massive returns on literally 50% of your bag. Let's just say it almost risk-free, right? Even though it's kind of not, because you could still lose. Now, for obvious reasons, and I'm going to probably repeat this in all videos, it would be down to you in terms of where your psychological threshold is, because it may go much higher than this, right? You have no limit on terms of certain situations. If you're getting very close to this, yeah, maybe discretion is, I might take a little bit more off the table. You might want to take 10% off around this point here, thinking, you know what, another 10% is not going to hurt, is it? But I've always vowed, since making a few little mistakes in the past, always leave something in. Even if that is 30% of your bag, 40% of your bag, or even 50% of your bag, it's hugely important that you do so you can reap more rewards. Because everyone can go, well, I might take 50% off here and like 10% off here, 10% off here. So you're pretty much nearly out of your bag anyways, even though there may be a significant amount of money here, but also hype, greed, fear of missing out as well may well come into the market, and it may well just make it go even higher. And then you are left thinking, I shouldn't have taken on my bag, basically, right? So again, same situation as what I said in the Polkadot one, is simple as that. Like, let it run. Let it run. It is down to you in terms of, well, where can this realistically go? Because if this starts going to say $35, $40, $50, and you've taken most of your bag out at like 15, you might be like, oh shit. So what I'm doing here, I'm protecting my ass here, but letting myself have 50% potentially to go, well, if this keeps on going, well, I'm laughing, tickle pink. Let's be honest here. You will still make a lot of money. I would, I know people in the comments who go, too conservative, but I've seen markets before where we do this with altcoins. We go up to like these 618 levels and you're not rewarded. You are not being paid because you've sat there and you've watched it evaporate, and you'd be like, oh God. And then it gets towards like $6 again, and you literally take it all out and you think you may have just lost six figures because you didn't take enough profit during the run up. You have to take profit on the run up, especially in crypto. It's a very, very different game. And if you've got some money in the market still and it keeps on going, well, keep taking profit. But it's down to you where you are with your emotions, because let's be fair here, right? And the last thing I'll talk about is, if you do go towards $20, 24, look at the amount of returns. It could be a 25x up here. You want to have something in the market just in case, right? Just in case. But if it starts trickling down, the hype starts to run off, and the market sentiment or the technical analysis starts to change, you can just go, well, I'll just take my profit. That's it, done. Cycle over. I will be happy with that. So arse covering first and then into the golden zone. Let's be honest here. So that is that video done. Short, sweet, snappy. I hope that makes more sense. This will be in my Patreon as exit plans. This is what I will probably be following very, very closely, because it kind of makes sense in terms of the obvious, right? I want to cover my ass and I want to have something up here to go, bollocks, let's just go. It's kind of risk-free when you've already taken enough profit. Yeah, there may be risk of some money being left off the table, but you don't want to go all the way up the hard part and then not take any profit, because that's silly, because it may never get to this let it run. If we get to the 618, we start dribbling out, and yeah, you lose a bit of money, at least you can take some of your profit from these lows at these levels and go, well, you know what, it's done. Anyways, if you like my stuff, check out the Patreon. Also, online courses, link below to learning crypto. There's a nice little discount there. And yeah, if I've bombed with you, sorry, please feel free to request more information in the comments. I will get back to you.